Humans are the most feared and reviled race of the galaxy. Every 10,000 years, when humans reach a certain level of technology, a galactic council sends a force to knock them back to the Stone Age. This time, however, that force arrives several decades late. Admiral Zixthara clicked nervously as the purification fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. The familiar blue-white star blazed ahead, but something was wrong. Terribly wrong. "Fleet Commander," his tactical officer's voice crackled with static, "I'm reading impossible energy signatures from the third planet." 73 years late. The Council had been dealing with the hegemony wars in the Outer Rim, and humanity's reset had been delayed. In galactic terms, a mere blink. What could these primitive apes accomplish in such a short time? The answer came as his fleet's sensors swept Earth's orbital space. "By the Ancient Ones," Zixthara whispered, "humanity hadn't just built ships, they had built an armada that dwarfed his purification fleet 50 to 1. Sleek vessels bristling with weaponry hung in perfect formation around their homeworld, like metallic wasps protecting their nest. But that wasn't what made his ichor run cold. It was the ships emerging from Jupiter's shadow, massive dreadnoughts, each one larger than his flagship, accelerating at impossible velocities. Their hulls bore scars and battle damage. These weren't ceremonial vessels. These were warships that had seen combat. "Admiral," his communications officer stammered, "incoming transmission. It's from Earth." The holographic display flickered to life, revealing a human male in a crisp military uniform. His species' predatory eyes locked onto Zixthara's with unsettling directness. "I am Admiral James Walker of the Terran Defense Force," he said, his voice carrying an edge that made Zixthara's exoskeleton shiver. "You're about 70 years behind schedule, Admiral. We've been expecting you." "Impossible," Zixthara said. "How do you know of the reset protocol?" Walker's lips curved into what humans called a smile, a predatory expression. "Oh, we know all about your little galactic daycare program. We've had time to investigate." The tactical display exploded with new contacts. Human ships were emerging from asteroid fields, gas giant atmospheres, even from what appeared to be folded space itself. The purification fleet was surrounded. "You see, Admiral," Walker continued, "when you're late to exterminate a species, you give them time to ask uncomfortable questions. Like why our ancient mythologies all speak of gods from the sky who burned our cities and cast us into darkness. Why certain archaeological sites show evidence of advanced civilizations that vanished overnight. Why our genetic diversity suggests massive population bottlenecks occurring every 10 millennia. Zixthara's worst fears crystallized. "You found the previous sites." "We found everything, the ash layers, the vitrified sand, the orbital bombardment craters your people thought erosion would hide." Walker's expression hardened. "We found the mass graves, Admiral. Billions of our ancestors murdered for the crime of learning to reach for the stars." The human admiral gestured, and the tactical display showed the approaching human fleet in all its terrifying glory. Ships that violated known physics, weapons that shouldn't exist, technology that represented not decades but centuries of advancement compressed into an impossible time frame. "How?" Zixthara managed. "You taught us the most valuable lesson of all," Walker said, "that we're not alone, that somewhere out there an entire galaxy conspires to keep us primitive and afraid. So we stopped being afraid, Admiral. We got angry instead." The human fleet had completed their encirclement. Weapon signatures were charging. The purification fleet, designed to obliterate Stone Age civilizations, suddenly felt very small and fragile. "Every 10,000 years you reset us to the Stone Age," Walker continued. "Well, congratulations, this time you're about to discover what humans can accomplish when we have all the motivation in the universe to never ever let that happen again." Zixthara's hand hovered over the emergency beacon that would alert the Council. But would it matter? If humans could build this in 70 years, what would they accomplish in 10,000? "Admiral Walker," he transmitted, his voice barely controlled, "perhaps we can discuss." "Discussion time ended 70 years ago," he cut him off. "Fire!" Space erupted in light as humanity's children opened fire on their would-be executioners. But even as his flagship's shields failed and his fleet burned around him, Admiral Zixthara's final thought wasn't of his own death. It was the chilling realization that Earth's fleet was only the vanguard. Behind them, massive jump gates were opening, and through them came something that made his species' worst nightmares pale in comparison. An entire human civilization that had spent 70 years preparing for war against an entire galaxy. The late arrival had become something else entirely. It had become humanity's first strike back.
Part 2. 3 months after the Sol incident, the Galactic Council convened in emergency session aboard the ancient orbital station Nexus Prime. What had once been humanity's execution chamber now served as their war room. Councillor Velthar studied the holographic display with growing dread. Red markers spread across the galaxy like a viral infection. Human fleets emerging from jump points that shouldn't exist, attacking infrastructure that had stood for millennia. 17 systems, High Councillor Myrdeen intoned, her voice carrying the weight of cosmic authority. In 3 months, they've crippled 17 systems. Not conquered, crippled. They strike the hyperspace beacons, the communication arrays, the supply depots, then vanish. It's coordinated, Admiral Kethvar added, his scarred face a testament to the hegemony wars. They're not randomly lashing out, they're systematically cutting our logistics network apart. Velthar gestured at the tactical display. How many ships? That's the problem. We don't know. Kethvar's admission hung in the chamber like poison. Every fleet we've encountered uses different ship designs, different tactics. Some look like evolved Earth technology. Others look like they're based on our own designs, but improved. The implication struck the Council like a physical blow. During the 70-year delay, humanity hadn't just prepared for war, they'd been studying their enemies. Impossible, Myrdeen declared. They had no access to galactic technology. A new voice cut through the chamber's atmosphere processors. Actually, we had extensive access. Every council member turned toward the chamber's center, where a human figure materialized. Not a hologram, but an actual human standing in their most secure facility. The man was middle-aged, wearing a simple gray uniform. His name tag read Dr. Monroe, Xenoarchaeology Division. How? Velthar began. Your people have been visiting Earth for 40,000 years, Dr. Monroe interrupted calmly. Every reset cycle, you left behind wreckage, crashed ships buried under sediment, weapons fused into glass by your orbital bombardments, damaged equipment thrown into our oceans. He smiled. Did you think we'd just ignore it? Security forces surrounded him, weapons trained, but he continued speaking as if lecturing students. We reverse-engineered your technology decades ago, your ships, your weapons, your FTL drives. But more importantly, we reverse-engineered your culture, your language, your weaknesses. You're bluffing, Myrdeen said, but uncertainty crept into her voice. Dr. Monroe spoke a series of words in perfect High Galactic, the ancient tongue used only by the innermost council circles. Words that described the council's most classified operations, their deepest fears, their hidden shames. The Veil Protocol, he said, the systematic suppression of emerging civilizations, the genetic harvesting programs, the forced evolutionary bottlenecks. We know about all of it. Kethvar stepped forward. What do you want? Want? Dr. Monroe laughed. Admiral, we're way past negotiation. We're here to deliver a message. Every species in this galaxy that your council has managed is going to learn the truth. Every civilization you've kept primitive is going to receive our gift of knowledge. The tactical display shifted, showing communication broadcasts spreading across the galaxy, human signals reaching isolated worlds, forgotten colonies, suppressed civilizations. We're not just fighting you, Dr. Monroe continued. We're liberating everyone you've held down. How many species have you reset over the millennia? How many civilizations have you murdered for reaching toward the stars? Those protocols maintain galactic stability, Myrdeen protested. Your stability, your control. Dr. Monroe's voice hardened. But that ends now. Every world you've touched, every species you've suppressed, every civilization you've destroyed, they're all going to hear the truth, and many of them are going to be very, very angry. Red markers began appearing on star charts across the galaxy. Not just human fleets, but indigenous uprisings, suppressed colonies breaking free, ancient grievances awakening. "This is chaos," Velthar whispered. "This is justice," Dr. Monroe corrected. 70 years ago, you came to reset one species. Instead, you're about to face the combined fury of everyone you've wronged across the last 100,000 years. He began to fade, his teleportation technology activating. "One more thing," he said, as his form became translucent. "The children you orphaned, the worlds you burned, the futures you stole, they all have names, and humanity remembers every single one." As he vanished, alarms began screaming throughout Nexus Prime. The tactical display exploded with new contacts, ships emerging from hyperspace all around the station. Not just human vessels, but a coalition fleet representing dozens of species the Council thought safely contained. Through the observation ports, Myrdine watched as humanity's true revenge began. They hadn't just prepared for war against their oppressors, they had awakened the galaxy itself. And leading the largest battle group was a massive dreadnought bearing the name Remember Terror in 100 different languages, a rolling memorial to every world the Council had ever burned. The late arrival had become something the Council never anticipated, the first day of their own extinction. 6 months after Nexus Prime fell, High Councillor Myrdine stood in the ruins of what had once been the galaxy's seat of power. The ancient station drifted dead in space, its halls now serving as a museum of galactic oppression, curated by the very species they had tried to destroy. She wasn't alone. Scattered throughout the chamber were the remnants of the Council, now prisoners awaiting judgment from a tribunal they never imagined could exist. The irony wasn't lost on her. This was the same chamber where they had ratified the reset protocols 10,000 years ago. Councillor Myrdine. The voice belonged to someone she recognized, Admiral Walker, the human who had orchestrated their first defeat at Sol. But Walker wasn't alone. Beside him stood representatives from dozens of liberated worlds. The crystalline Zephyri, whose homeworld had been sterilized for developing quantum computing. The aquatic Morden, whose ocean cities had been boiled away for achieving interstellar flight. The energy-based Luxara, who had been scattered across space for transcending physical form. "Admiral," Myrdine replied, maintaining what dignity she could. "Have you come to gloat?" "No." Walker's voice carried surprising gravity. "We've come to understand." A new figure stepped forward, an elderly human male with kind eyes that held depths of ancient pain. Dr. James Okafor, Chief Historian of the Liberation Coalition. "We've spent the last 6 months investigating your archives." He gestured, and holographic displays filled the chamber with data spanning millions of years. The true scope of the Council's activities across galactic history. 47,000 civilizations, Dr. Okafor said quietly. 47,000 species that reached toward the stars, only to be knocked back into darkness, some multiple times. His eyes found Myrdine's. "Including your own." The revelation hit like a physical blow. Impossible. "Your people were reset 8 times before they were allowed to join the Council," Walker said. "Each time your species climbed back up, only to be cast down again, until finally you broke. You joined your oppressors rather than face another extinction." The display showed Myrdine's own species' history, cycles of rise and fall, advancement and destruction, hope and despair. Until the last reset, when they had emerged not as explorers or innovators, but as enforcers of the very system that had tormented them. "We weren't the first to resist," Dr. Okafor continued. "We found records of 17 other species who figured out the pattern. The Kethmori lasted 3 cycles before accepting Council membership. The Velshari held out for 5 resets. The record holder managed 7 cycles of resistance before they joined you. Veltar, cowering in a corner, looked up with hollow eyes. We had no choice. There's always a choice, said a new voice. The speaker was unlike anything in the chamber, a being of pure energy contained within a crystalline lattice. One of the Luxara, the species that had transcended physical form before being corrected by the Council. I am harmony of purpose, the being said, its voice resonating through quantum frequencies. I remember our first transcendence. I remember the joy of becoming more than flesh. I remember the Council ships arriving to force us back into primitive matter. The energy within the crystal pulsed with ancient rage. I remember choosing to forget, choosing to serve, choosing to become complicit rather than face oblivion again. More voices joined in, each species represented in the chamber, adding their stories of defeat, compliance, and complicity. A chorus of civilizations that had once reached for greatness, only to become instruments of oppression to avoid their own destruction. The cycle ends here, Admiral Walker declared. Not just the resets, but the entire system that creates them. Dr. Okafor activated another display. We've identified the source. The original civilization that started the reset protocols isn't extinct. They're in the galactic core, hidden behind automated systems and ancient AIs. They've been playing puppet master for millions of years, ensuring no species ever grows powerful enough to challenge them. The first ones, Myrdeen whispered. Every council member knew the legends, but they were considered myth. Not myths, Walker said. Cowards. A species so afraid of competition that they built a galaxy-wide system to prevent any other civilization from achieving their level of advancement. They turned evolution itself into a weapon. The chamber filled with representatives from thousands of liberated worlds, species that had hidden in the shadows or served the Council out of fear. Now they stood together, no longer victims or enforcers, but allies in a cause greater than any of them. We're going to the galactic core, Admiral Walker announced. We're going to find the first ones, and we're going to end this cycle permanently. Myrdeen looked around the chamber at faces both familiar and alien, all united by shared trauma and newfound purpose. What happens to us? To the Council? Dr. Okafor's expression softened slightly. You have a choice. The same choice we're offering every species in this galaxy. Join us in building something better, or remain prisoners of the system that enslaved you all. The humans could have chosen revenge, Harmony of Purpose added. Instead, they chose liberation, even for their oppressors. Through the chamber's massive viewports, Myrdeen could see the assembled fleet, not just human ships now, but vessels from hundreds of species, all working together. Former enemies serving alongside former victims, united by a common goal that none of them could achieve alone. For the first time in millennia, she felt something she had thought lost forever. Hope. The first ones have had millions of years to prepare, she said finally. They built this entire system. How can you possibly? Because they made one crucial mistake, Walker interrupted, his smile carrying the weight of absolute certainty. They taught the galaxy to work together. Every species they reset, every civilization they controlled, every world they managed, we all learned the same lesson. He gestured to the incredible diversity of beings filling the chamber. They created the perfect alliance to destroy them. They just gave us 70 extra years to figure out how to use it. The fleet began moving toward the galactic core, carrying not just weapons and ships, but something the first ones had never faced in their millions of years of dominance, a united galaxy that remembered what they had lost and refused to lose it again. The late arrival was becoming the last war, and this time the oppressed had learned to fight as one.